All right, well, welcome everybody on this fine Sunday. I am dressed in my blue silks, my beautiful jewels, as well as these feathers. You guys would have no idea how much this all cost. But I wanted to show you what it would look like, what me and my girls would go down Higgins Avenue in a big parade during Easter Sunday, just to show you exactly what that would look like. And you guys know me by many names. My name is Mother Gleim, Madam Mary Gleim. However, I was born with the simple name of Minnie Winifred Gleason. I was born over the sea in Ireland, Tipperary to be exact, in 1945. Around that time was the potato famine. There was very much limited resources at that time. My father, he owned some land in Tipperary. However, he was ever the strict type, and I made my way to London. After that, I managed to meet a man named John Gleim. John Gleim and I got married in Essex. And I will be honest with you, John wasn't very much. You know, it wasn't very long after our wedding in Essex that he got thrown into jail for stabbing a man. Needless to say, he did not finish the job. Otherwise, he would have found his end at the end of a hangman's noose before we even made our way to the United States. After being in England and Ireland, we decided to make our way to the United States, to Ellis Island in the 1870s, right after the Civil War. After we decided to come to the United States, the first place we came was New York City. And I started to make my money in New York City. I was listed in a lot of crime lists, including the Rogues Alley list. And there was a lot of policemen and lawmen coming after me, as well as my husband, for our crime activities at the time. So we decided to move west. It's west to Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri. In St. Louis, they provided us a lot of opportunities to make that Gleim fortune bigger. Like I said, John wasn't that much help. He had a big problem with the booze and the gambling that eventually ended up taking his life. Bless his heart. But we went to St. Louis, and that's when I really started making money and making the Gleim fortune that would last us for a very, very long time. And after St. Louis, we decided to go further west. I stopped in Montana before I realized that Canada and Alaska, up north, those were the places that I could build my boarding houses, where I can set up my business for lace and ladies' underwears and silks, and begin to amass that fortune even further. I tried to make my way to Alaska and Canada twice in a row, and those border agents caught wind of me coming in, and they denied us at the border, not once, but 2 times. So I ended up coming to Missoula in 1883 is when we decided to finally live here, me and my husband, John. And in 1883, the Northern Pacific Railroad arrived. That meant I had a lot of customers. That meant that I had a West Front Street to build and to have my properties there. We had quite a community in Missoula to build. We had the Chinese community located on Front Street, and I would make sure that they had the land that they needed to have their buildings. We had medicine parlors, we had restaurants, we had laundries right there on Main and Front Street. And my girls would go there and get their goods and get treated by the doctors there, because the other doctors would refuse to treat my girls. So I would give money to the incense temple that was over there by the Star Lodge that I owned. I would give money to the shaman that they have, and also the parades. The parades would have great dress, great culture that we would have to be a part of. And I treated my girls very, very, very well. I wanted my girls to have an education if they wanted an education. I gave them a place to stay. I gave them a place to raise their own money. Now, mind you, the men came to me too. I was one of the businesswomen, like Higgins or Hammond, Madam Mary Gleim. If you needed money, you would come to me because I can come up with it. That means the lawmen, the businessmen, the lawyers, anybody who wanted to go to school, the bankers, if they needed a loan, they would come to me and I would repay them with that and they would repay me. Missoula had a lot of buildings that needed to be built. We have clay nearby, not a lot of clay, not a lot of great clay. I ended up losing a bit of my purse, but I ended up owning 1/3 of this bricklaying company. And this 1/3 helped me rebuild a lot of Missoula, especially after the fires that we've had and the flood of 1908 that took out the whole back half of my row out of the 8 brothels that were right there on West Front Street of mine that I publicly owned. So in 1908, we had to do those rebuildings. We had to go and rebuild Missoula. Now, I've been known to get into a tussle or two. I do not take any sass, any disrespect from nobody, no matter who you are. That is something that I am well known for. The booze would bring out demons in people, the saloons on the West Front Street, and I would make sure my girls and everybody else was well behaved. Hell, they wouldn't even behave in church. One day I was in my Catholic Mass. I would bring my girls to church every Sunday. We would be in those back pews. And one day, those ignorant priests had no idea how to give the sermon in the proper Lord's Latin. So I gave them a little lesson in Latin and tore off their vestments. And that did end me a little short stint in the Missoula County Jail, which I have been a few times because of these said tussles, but nothing, and I say nothing, was as bad as the Montana State Penitentiary. And I ended up there. I will proclaim my innocence from the grave that I was in San Francisco minding my own business when a bout of dynamite was hit right by one of my main competitors, Cornelius Bobby Burns. Ugh, Cornelius Bobby Burns. So he accused me and a couple of my accomplices, Private William Reed and also Cameron, to come. They accused them of that crime as well, that they dynamited the house right next to him. If I were to dynamite somebody, do you think I would miss? No. That was not me, so I proclaimed my innocence. However, I went to trial, and I was sentenced to Deer Lodge for over a decade. But I got my retrial. The lawyers, the businessmen, everybody who has helped me over the years, they helped me get that retrial. And all the witnesses, all those who accused me, they were gone all of a sudden. So my retrial made it so I was released for Deer Lodge after just 1 year of being there. After I returned to Missoula, my dear husband, John, bless his heart, he lost his fight with the devil, the devil's rum, the alcohol, and he succumbed right here in this small little stone right here. However, I moved not too long after that over to Main Street, just a street over. This is in 1908, right after the floods, and right after they burnt my buildings in Hamilton, my boarding houses. So I decided to watch from afar the red light district. And so you might wonder, how did I meet my death? I met my death at 69. I decided to come to you today as my 30-year-old self, because who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to come from the grave back as your 30-year-old self? Am I right, ladies? Indeed. So that's what you are seeing today, along with a little bit of tussle left over and a little bit of this Spanish flu that you might hear in my voice. That is how I succumbed in 1914 at the age of 69. We had a very large pandemic that I hope the union never ever has to face another pandemic like that again. That would just be awful. But this is my resting place now. There's actually a few rumors I've heard about this very large granite gravestone, that it was placed here at my request to face the railroad, to wave goodbye to my boys. And mind you, I loved my boys when they behaved. I loved my boys. However, this stone is thanks to my surviving family, my niece and my nephew. They are the ones who ended up spending the money to get me this very large gravestone, and it's so large that it didn't end up fitting along with what was already existing here. So, thank you so much for joining me on this fine Sunday. I want you to go off and meet the rest of my friends and my enemies that are existing here at Cemetery, and you have yourself a wonderful Sunday.